Hello all, this is Solomon. I'm going to be showing you guys a tutorial on Stripe and Stripe Connect and working with Express specifically. So what Express is, it's basically a marketplace where you're able to pay users, or whether it be drivers like an Uber or Lyft, or taskers and TaskRabbit. You'll be able to pay them or transfer funds to their account from your Stripe account. So if you know what Stripe is in general, Stripe's just a payment platform. And so this is a feature that Stripe has to offer that we utilize at my company at Favor. So yeah, so let's dive right into it. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create our directory. So we're going to call it Stripe Express Tutorial. All right, and then so we're going to want to download our packages. So if you're going to have PHP and Composer installed on your machine before you can actually do this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to uh, we're going to cd into our Stripe Express tutorial directory. Let's clear that. And then we're going to do a touch composer.json. And so, yeah, I'm not going to run a composer install quite yet. I'm actually going to open up this directory within Visual Studio Code. So that's loading real quick. Bring that over here. Alrighty, so in our composer file, we're going to have two packages. We're going to have the .env package from vLucas, and then we're going to have the Stripe PHP package. So I'm going to copy and paste that over here. And so as you can see, we got the Stripe, then we got the vLucas php.env, which allows us to read from, make a .env if you're familiar with that. That's where you hold your secret keys and stuff like that. All right. So the first thing we're going to want to do is, since we have this composer.json ready, we're going to run a composer install. I'll pause that while that runs. All right, so that ran through smoothly. So we're going to create our files. So let's open up Visual Studio again. So the first thing we want to create is our index.html file. Then we're going to want to create login.html. Oops, there we go. Then we're going to run an init.php, which is going to be where the main functions are stored, where all the logic's going to be completed at. And then we're going to create our env, which is held for your secret keys and stuff like that. All right, so I'm going to bring over my browser and show the Stripe Express documentation. So as you can see, Stripe has documentation on their types of Connect accounts. So we're working with Express, and so they have an Express demo, which is a lot more complex than what I'm showing you today. But the basic process of the Stripe Express is your application creates an OAuth link that sends them over to Stripe, right? And so they fill out their payment information and that vital information to be able to get paid. And then the next thing is Stripe sends them or redirects them right back to your redirect URL. And then they also have the code, the temporary code used to verify that Express account, which then creates an actual Express account. So just doing step one alone won't create the Express account. It's that step two where you have to verify that code, that it's an actual human being completing the form. So after it redirects to your URL, you're going to need a way to identify that user, which they have a state value that you have to pass yourself. In our application, we just pass in the user's session ID or session token to identify that specific user. Just because you'll have them fill out a form, and if you can't identify who that user is, then that it was kind of pointless what they just did, because you won't be able to save it into your database, because you won't be able to link it to the proper user. So yeah, and then so after they Stripe sends you back to the URL, of course you're going to save that information within your database. You're going to save the Stripe user ID, I believe it is. So it's very interesting how Stripe has it set up. If you have any questions or something like that, or you're curious, just check out their documentation, because they explain it a whole lot better than I do, of course. I'm just kind of showing a tutorial today. So yeah, let's dive right back into it. So talk about that process again. Like I said, so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to populate our env file. So the fields that we're going to need is our Stripe public key. We're going to need our Stripe secret. So I'm not going to be showing my keys just for the purpose of security reasons. And the Stripe Connect URL. I'm going to show you how to get the Stripe Connect URL real quick. So let me get up my browser real quick, dashboard. Let me get that up on a separate screen real quickly. All right, so looking at the Stripe documentation and stuff, not the documentation, but our dashboard, you have to add in the redirect URL that you want to go to. So in this specific case, we're going to do HTTP localhost. If you have a port, you might want to include that. You have to include that port. So 1234 Stripe Express -tutorial, and then /init.php. And so if we go over back to that documentation and refresh the page, if you're logged in, Stripe will actually give you your full URL that you have to pass. So if it will use the default URL, at least right here, but it's going to follow the same format. So you're going to put this into your env file. So I'm going to bring this back over here. All right. So just for the privacy's sake, I'm going to move my Visual Studio Code to a different screen real quick, just for the privacy reasons. -tutorial. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to start wanting to populate our init.php and begin the process of writing the code. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to open up our PHP tags, and we're going to have to get our dependencies real quickly. So we're going to require the vendor autoload, because as you can see, when we ran that composer install, it installed our packages, so Stripe, and then we got our .env over here, as you can see. So load.php. Next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to initiate our .env package. That's not right. And so without this, you won't be able to actually use your env without initializing it into your code. So this is what this is doing real quickly. Alrighty. And so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to use a few Stripe classes. So we're going to use a Stripe account, and we're going to want to use the Stripe, which is going to initialize our API key. All right, so now we're ready to start writing our code. So the first thing we're going to want to do is, remember that process I was talking about. So the first thing that happens is our application redirects that user to Stripe. So the function that we're going to write it's literally going to be called redirect to Stripe. So function redirect to Stripe, and this is when they fill out that index HTML form. So in the real world case, like I said, you would actually use the session token of that user to identify who it is. Because like I said, so if I pull up this browser again, the state value is how you identify the user. So in my env, I got rid of this right here and just left it as the state is equal to. And so what I'm doing is I'm concatenating I'm going to be concatenating the name of the user to that connect URL. So if I do get env stripe connect URL dot name. So this is just identifying that state, who the person is, what person's filling out the application. So in the real world situation, you would use information from your database, and if somebody's logged in with the session and you save your sessions in the back end, you can just tie that session ID to the connect URL to identify the user. All right. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to redirect the user to that URL. So we're going to do location I want to do it URI instead of URL. All right. So that's the first function. So like I said, we're redirecting to Stripe, and then after that, Stripe's going to redirect back to our application. So we're going to need some type of response handling for that. We're going to have a function set up that basically creates the Express account app from that code that we receive from Stripe. That code is temporary, I said. It's going to be within your query parameter. So, like I said, it only lasts about 10 minutes. So you want to, run this code immediately. So you're going to have some type of conditional statement checking if there's a query parameter called code, just to actually fill out or create the Express account right away. So that function is going to be function stripe curl command. So in my application for Favor, we actually utilize Guzzle's HTTP package, which is just an abstraction layer above curl using object-oriented PHP. However, in this case, I'm not going to use the actual Guzzle HTTP package because not everybody's familiar with the Guzzle HTTP package, but everybody should be familiar with curl if they've ever used PHP. So the first thing we want to do is want to initialize curl. So we're going to do a curl init. All right. And then we're going to set our URL. Which is going to be that curl opt URL. And then it's going to be the Stripe OAuth or connect URL. And what I might actually do is I might just actually copy this code into our code over here. I'll just talk through it, what each one does. So yeah, the next thing is it's going to allow transfers, and then it's going to create our post fields, which is going to include our Stripe secret key, that Stripe code that we get from the query parameter, and then the grant type or what type of authorization this is. So that's being posted, and then this just verifies that we're using the post method. And then we got our headers, which is a content application www form URL encoded, which is basically a web form being submitted. That's what it's expecting. All right. And so after we've created that user, we want to be able to log into that, our Stripe dashboard from our application. So being able to check our funds, being able to change our information, we got to let the user log into their Stripe account. So we're going to create a function called function login to Stripe dashboard. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to initialize that. We're going to have to set our API key. So get env Stripe secret. And this is a secret key you do not want to share with anybody. All right. Then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to find that, find that account, that Stripe account. So account retrieve a token, or it really is Stripe user ID. I don't know why I put token, but I'm just going to keep there for this particular case. I will have comments throughout my code. I'm going to share it to GitHub potentially. I'm going to share it to GitHub. So you'll see a lot of comments in what each thing does. But in this particular case, in this video right now, I'm not going to do the comments. But yeah, if you do have questions or need some type of documentation, I will have comments in the GitHub. All right. Next thing is we're going to want to create an object from that account. So this is going to create a login link. So login links create. That's going to be an object, of course. And so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get the URI or URL from that object. So it's going to be object URL. And we're going to redirect them to that URI. All right, so we've created our functions. The next thing we should actually do now is we're going to create our HTML, which is going to be very, very basic. We're not even going to have any CSS or anything like that. So I'm just going to really copy paste what I have, and you'll be able to follow along very easily. So what's happening is I'm just giving the title of the Stripe Express tutorial, but so what we're filling out is our first name, which we're using to identify the state. Like I said, in your application in a real world scenario, you will want to use a session identifier or some type of token to identify that user, to save that Stripe account to your database and tie it to that user. Otherwise, you just have a Stripe account with no identifiable user. So yeah. So this is just going to, after submitting this, we're going to be redirected to that Stripe URL to fill out our information. And so we're going to want to write some code to handle that. So what we're going to do is go back to our init.php, and we're going to create an if statement. So if is set, if the button has been pushed, we're going to run our code. Submit, redirect, Stripe, and then we're going to include that state parameter, which in this application or in this tutorial, I'm just using my first name. All right, and so there's that. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to handle when Stripe redirects us back to our application. So what we're going to do is if is set, and this is going to be that query parameter code that they send back, which is only temporary. All right. So we're going to get an object from that function, Stripe curl command, get code, and then we're going to get our state, which, like I said, this is going to be in your application. It's going to be a way to identify the user, but I'm just going to create a variable for it, but I'm not really going to be using it in this case. It's really going to be more so for you. Like I said earlier, though, I'm going to have a whole lot of comments, so you'll be able to follow along easy if you're just checking the code by yourself. It'll be in that GitHub repository, like I said. So the next thing is we're going to want to get our Stripe ID from that object that we created. So data, Stripe user ID. We're just going to print that Stripe ID. So this is what you're going to want to save into your database, the Stripe ID. You're going to want to tie it to that user. So if you want to create transfers for them, if you want to transfer funds to their account, if you want them to be able to log into their dashboard, you have to have that Stripe ID in your database. All right. And so lastly, we're going to be handling once we've saved that Stripe ID, we're going to want to log into that dashboard account or log into the Stripe dashboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the HTML for that. It's going to basically follow the same exact format of the previous HTML. So we're just going to copy paste. Note, there's not going to be any CSS. It's going to be all very plain. But as you can see, we got the instead of the first name, we're inputting the Stripe ID, and then we got the login as the button instead of submit. But yeah, so once they submit this, they're going to be redirected to Stripe, where they can see their funds and account information, or be able to change their account information if necessary. So yeah. All right, so now we're going to have to handle that login in our PHP code. So looking at our init.php, so if is set post login, we're going to log in to Stripe dashboard with that Stripe ID. Alrighty, so we should be set. There might be a few bugs, but we'll find them along the way. So we're going to be testing our process real quick. So we'll get our browser up real quick. Localhost 123 port 1234. Stripe Express tutorial. All right. So we're gonna put my first name in. We're gonna help. Let me just say Solomon. All right. As you can see, it redirects us to Stripe. You are gonna since we're in test mode, as you can see over here, this test mode, we do not want to use an actual Stripe account. So let's just use a test email. So JJ at jjfish.com. But you're gonna want to use a real phone number though. You're gonna have to have that because they're gonna send you a login code. Oh, somebody's probably already used this before. There we go. Oh, why is it taking forever? It looks like Stripe is buffering. Oh, we'll just pause it until. All right, so it went through. I just had this. It sent a Stripe SMS where I just had to input 6-digit code to verify my phone number. But we're going to fill out our information. So we're just going to say George Washington. We'll use my actual birthday. Who cares? So we're going to want to use a test debit card. So if we do Stripe testing connect, they'll give us some test cards that we can test with. They'll give test bank accounts, and they'll also give the test debit cards. Oh, that's not right. There we go. Testing with connect. My fault. There we go. So we'll just use the debit card of information, and then for the expiration date, this has to be something in the future. All right, so we'll create the account, see if there's any bugs going on. All right, so as you can see, we have our account. If you look at the query parameter over here, it gave us that temporary code, which then was able to create that Stripe user ID. And then next, you can see that we have our state, which in your application, I can't emphasize this enough, it's going to be the way you identify the user. So you're going to want to use some type of session ID or session token or something like that to be able to identify the user. Otherwise, you just have the Stripe user ID, but not being able to tie it to a user. So that, what use would that be, of course? So, all right, so we're going to copy this right here, and we're going to try to log in with this. So go to login.html. All right, click the login button. All right, so it redirected us to Stripe, and then we have our information, as you can see. So yeah, you can see our balance. You can edit the account if necessary. Yeah, there we go. All right, so that's that tutorial of using Stripe Express accounts and working with Connect, the Stripe Connect Express accounts. My fault. Um, if you have any questions, please just comment below. If you have recommendations for new videos or what you would like to see next, also comment below. I will have this code up on GitHub, which will be in the description. And then I'll also have some type of the packages necessary you need required before starting the tutorial as well. So yeah, I'm Solomon, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch our video. It really means a lot. So yeah, you take care now. Bye bye.